Hi, my name is Jim Thomason, and I'm the Senior Group Account Executive within the fleet and commercial space. And JD Power is bringing the full cost of electrifying your fleet into focus. For those who may not be familiar, JD Power officially acquired ZappyRide in early 2023, and we immediately merged the ZappyRide capabilities within our EV practice space. ZappyRide is and has been a white label software and data provider that builds tools to help a very wide landscape, including fleet management companies, utilities, OEMs, rideshare companies, and green tech stakeholders to promote thought leadership in electrifying consumers and fleet vehicles. So joining me today is Richard Hall. Richard is the head of JD Power's EV products in the ZappyRide team, as well as Sachin, Sawhney. Sachin is a VP of the business development and also on the ZappyRide team. So this webinar is a discussion that's intended to help our fleet partners, the fleet industry, and the like to navigate all of that is available to make decisions before and during the path to electrification. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be discussing incentive and tax credits and what JD Power is hearing from the fleet industry. We're also going to discuss incentives and JD Power's capabilities to help the fleet industry navigate through rebates and with a robust dashboard tool that we will demonstrate. We're also going to talk about total cost of ownership for electrifying the fleet, of course, and electrification project planning. Now, if everyone could just please place all of your questions into the chat section. And for any questions that we can't get addressed during this webinar, we will reach out to you with an answer by email following today's session. Next slide, please. So we're leading with incentives at the top of the conversation because it's not just a substantial topic, but also one that we're asked about very often as far as advice for navigating incentives, or what data does JD Power have to help a fleet navigate through incentive qualifications, rebates, qualifying vehicles, among many others. And just wanting to learn about incentives was also a common question that was submitted to us in advance of this discussion. So Richard, again, welcome. We've talked about this a little bit together, and it's probably a good place for us to start. When it comes to tax credits and infrastructure cost credits, and I'm thinking about the likes of a Tesla or a Mustang Mach-E with $7,500 that's available through the commercial clean tax credit, and upwards of almost, I think, $2,000 towards charging infrastructure costs that are available, which basically means that there could be a lot of money left on the table if the industry doesn't know what's available to them. Do you care to comment on that?
Jim, thanks a lot. Yes, we've actually encountered this situation directly. We've had people, we've literally been sitting at a table at a conference, and we've had people buying hundreds of SUVs. And we said, you're getting the $7,500 tax credit for those, aren't you, from the feds? And they were surprised. They realized they'd left over $500,000 on the table. That was just one example. And there's others, but I think Sachin, my colleague, can take us through just briefly here this wonderful map and tool we put together. Sachin.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Jim. So this map is an incentive dashboard, and the reason we've actually created this incentive dashboard is really the purpose is when we've spoken with fleet management companies or we've spoken with dealers or EV OEMs, what they'll really ask is their customers are asking, look, I know electrification is coming. I know I need to do this. Help me understand if I'm looking at 5% of my fleet, 2%, 10%, where's the best place to go and electrify? Is it going to be California still? Is it going to be, if I've got Colorado or Texas or Florida? So what this map does is this map shows the intensity, as Richard highlighted, on the incentive. So Richard, go ahead and highlight Colorado, right? So if you highlight Colorado,
hold on. There we go.
there you go. No, down, way.
There we go.
Right. So right there, you can see if you're in the market to kind of understand what's available and where I should electrify, you could see right away that there's 10 federal incentives. There's 10 state incentives, 31 utility incentives, right? And this is all an important piece, because if I'm a person who is thinking about electrification, I want to capitalize and I want to get the most money back from some of these incentives. So what this does is this takes into account all the different incentives that exist. And let's say you click on Colorado, Richard, or maybe California or whatever. What it's going to do, it's going to then start breaking down all those incentives by status level, organization type level. It could be in equipment, it could be for chargers or vehicles, vehicle type, weight class, charger type, location, down to the zip code level. And this is factoring in federal, state, municipality, utility. It is taking all those factors and it is then identifying which incentives you could potentially apply for. Richard, I'll pass it back to you to go over that a little bit.
Yeah, so you might be looking at, you have some box trucks, and in fact, we can say, let's say we have a depot in California. We can basically type in the zip code and see all instantly. And here we filtered by box trucks, we're seeing incentives that are applicable to box trucks. You can see here some of these incentives cover not just the vehicle, but also the charger. So I'm going to look down, there's one particular great incentive that many of you may be aware of already, which is the HVIP incentive. The incentive for this is very sizable. And this tool lets you literally, one of the things you're going to be wondering is how long is an incentive open for? So some of them may be imminently closing. They're only open for a few months a year. The tool lets you know that. Sometimes there are incentives that are on hiatus, that are dormant for a few months and then reappear. So we track those so that you're aware you're not just blind to these other incentives that can be worth, in this one, up to 100% of the costs of the vehicle. The South Coast Air Quality Management District incentive. But this HVIP incentive, let's say I am going to put some box trucks in my Beverly Hills, California, unlikely though it may be, location. I can see here a summary of the incentives that apply to this location. I've filtered it on box trucks. I can click on more detail. You can see here I can get up to $150,000 per vehicle. So if you're a salesperson, if I was digging for this, it might take me hours, not the time I'm going to have available. I'm not going to have the patience for it. This tool allows a very time-sensitive salesperson, someone on your team selling vehicles, selling chargers, or doing the planning for locations for a fleet, to quickly see, okay, this is $150,000 per vehicle up to, and then it gives you more specific information like the application window, who's the grantor, it's California, and then here it gives you a quite detailed description. So here I can see that a class 7 box truck is going to receive $85,000. So that's a very substantial chunk of money towards a box truck. It's going to knock the price of that EV box truck down to be similar, possibly even less than the price of an equivalent ICE vehicle. Let me pass it back to you, Jim. I think that brings a summary there of that product, which is called our incentive dashboard from ZappyRide. Let me bring back the presentation.
Richard. Thank you, Sachin. Appreciate it. So, thank you for that demonstration and just kind of an overall reminder of how significant incentives, incentive data, incentive navigation tools, specifically the tools are, for all of us as we learn about electrification. Now, switching topics, just there's also this major task of navigating through total cost of ownership. And Richard and Sachin, I've had the benefit of listening to you explain different use cases where, for example, if you were to buy a large volume of cargo vans and specifically break down the purchase price and comparisons, there are real results of upwards of say $2 million depending on the volume of that purchase. Would you care to elaborate a little bit on that as it relates to total cost of ownership?
Absolutely. So let me show you this fleet TCO tool that we've built.
Yeah, it was specifically, I was thinking about a recent conversation that we had about, I think it was the Ford E-Transit cargo van. I don't know if that helps.
Perfect. So let's talk about you're looking at a depot that has 100 Ford transit vans that are currently diesels, and you're wondering, what difference would it make to my cash flow, the ROI be, if I switch 100 of those Ford transit vans to be e-transits? So what we do here is, this is our fleets tool that builds a TCO, a cash flow model. And we ask a simple series of questions. We deliberately keep the questions down to the minimum to get you through this. You can add and finesse this. There's lots of assumptions you can adjust later. So I'm just going to say I'm a medium or large business, but I could have been any one of these. I could be a native tribe, a public school district. And the reason we're asking this is because depending on who you are, you may get additional incentives. And the tool is going to automatically calculate for you based on not just who you are as an organization, based on your location. I'm going to leave it to California here for simplicity. There is a large number of incentives in California, as most people know, but we have the database federal, state, utility, and local for all the incentives for chargers and vehicles. So I'm going to say, as we talked about, I've got 140 transits, Ford cargo vans. So I'm going to say I've got some cargo vans. I've got 100. They are medium duty, let's say, and they are, I'm going to say, I want to understand what would it be if I switched these to e-transit, long body, high roof. So all these vans, all these electric vehicles are in the system. And you can see here side by side how they line up. Obviously, the fossil fuel vehicle has a longer range, but the efficiency you can see is startlingly different. So 7 miles per gallon for the fossil fuel vehicle, the diesel, but 54 miles per gallon equivalent for the Ford E-Transit. That is the alternative. And I could have chosen here from a catalog of many, many different vehicles. We have hundreds in the database. So I can choose any particular candidate vehicle and say I want to compare it with this fossil fuel vehicle. And one of the things you'll probably say is, I don't pay this money, I don't pay that price, and I don't believe your stats. Well, we know that's a common situation. Will be the range or the price I'm going to pay or the efficiency is different. All these things can be overwritten. So the tool is very flexible, allows you to put your assumptions in, which may differ from what the tool thinks, and then builds a model from it. You can do that for both the ICE or the electric vehicles. Here, then, it's going to ask you to understand the usage. And so I'm going to say we're driving, let's say 80 miles a day. And I'm going to drive these vans. These 100 vans are operating on weekdays, but I could have specified which particular days they were if I needed to. And they're going to be used for all months of the year. If there were maybe a school bus, I could have deselected July and August or June to July, or whatever, so that we've got that built in and we understand the usage profile of the vehicle. Now, this is a very powerful screen. Obviously, a key aspect which you're going to have with an EV that you don't have with an ICE vehicle, given you've got gas stations on every corner, you now have to provide the fueling infrastructure. And that presents a challenge is, well, okay, where do I start? This automatically, the tool guides you to charges. It's automatically selected. It's saying here, a charge has been recommended based on 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. charging for your particular vehicle, that Ford E-Transit, driving 80 miles a day. You only need a level 2 7.2 kilowatt charger. But I can have changed the start times. I can change the end time. Maybe there's different dwell times. I can add additional middle of the day charging windows. Say if I want to top it up at the depot or at a public charger, I can do that. And I can also say, no, I want a bit of safety. I'm going to change the size of the charger, have a little more capacity if I need to. But this is right sizing it, and it guides you to the right charges, which obviously have a significant impact on the cost because you're buying that fueling infrastructure that you wouldn't have had to purchase if you were getting a diesel or gasoline vehicle. And here is the result. So Jim, I think you alluded to, what was the number? I think you said 1 million. Well, I think
I said 2 million, but that was with that was like 20, yeah. I think, vans. So yeah,
20. Okay, fair enough. So here, the 100 E40 transits. I think the writing's on the wall here. So the savings over the lifetime, and we default here to 10 years. You could change that if you want. You can say that any number of years you want to look at the lifetime. This is over 10 years. You're going to save $17 million. Very substantial saving. And here is how that pans out. You can see here in this chart. We've got all these summary figures here. So maybe you've got a CFO or execs who are like, okay, show me how this breaks down. This is all breaking down year by year. You can see here, it's quite startling. The yellow curve here is the cash flow for the electric vehicles. And yes, it starts off very close at the purchase cost minus those incentives that we talked about to the cost of the diesel vehicles. But very, very quickly, you can see you'd be paying 30 billion cumulative cost over the 10 years for the diesel vehicles. But the same vehicles, if they were electric, would only cost you close to under 13 million, it looks like. And we can see how that breaks down here with bar charts that show you, here are the fuel costs. Look at the comparison here. You're paying 15 million for the fuel for the cargo vans that are diesel, but you're only paying 3 million over the 10 years for the electrics. I won't go through every single one, but you can see also we break down all these cost components for you. We show the total savings of each element and things like infrastructure. We're going to show you that, yes, you're going to pay $35,000 to purchase those chargers. We also estimate the cost of installation, which typically exceeds, as you can see here, the cost of the installation exceeds the cost of the chargers. And we're also applying all the incentives that bring those costs down. So we can show all this detail. So where before in the incentive dashboard, Jim, we showed like you could save up to $150,000. Now we're going to get down to nuts and bolts. For this particular purchase of 100 e-transits, I'm going to get $750,000 from the commercial clean vehicle tax credit, $100,000 for the alternative fuel infrastructure tax credit, which is going to drop the cost of those charges. Here in some incentives we didn't get, obviously we're not an airport, we didn't get the airport one. These particular vehicles may not have been covered by the California HVIP, but there's other incentives that we can see why you didn't get them or why you did get the amount. So it breaks down and shows you exactly like a snapshot of it. This location, this is how the incentives stack up. Here's the ones you didn't get as well as the ones you did get, so you can get a clear picture. We provide a lot of other detailed information. For instance, we work out the maintenance costs. Most of you know the maintenance costs on the EVs are much lower. We track that out. So here's the maintenance costs that are all rolled up into that cash flow. We also show you the insurance costs. Typically, EVs cost a little more because the insurance cost is going to consider the replacement cost of the vehicle. It doesn't consider the incentives. So the insurer is looking at that MSRP, and so you get slightly greater hit. But this is all absorbed, as we saw by the EV fuel costs, the maintenance costs being so much lower. We can see the charger in detail, and we can go into a catalog and select between hundreds of different chargers. And those can be specific makes and models. We'll work out the exact incentives that apply. We'll warn you if you're choosing an undersized model. Yes, you can break all this down. If you're in California, we even show you LCFS carbon credits, how much you're going to generate revenue there. Larger fleets do tend to generate quite sizable amounts of revenue from that. And we'll also calculate what that should cost. But ultimately, it rolls up into, you can see for this location, how much money you're going to save. It's substantial. And I can basically add multiple vehicle sets. So I can have a location with a mixture of transit vans, box trucks, SUVs, for instance. And this tool will cover the whole gamut from, passenger sedans right up to Class 8 trailer trucks. It also even covers off-road vehicles. So with that, let me pass it back to Jim and Sachin.
Okay, thanks, Richard. I think we might have lost your volume for a second. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, there you go. So I have one more to kind of throw at you though, before we move on from the demo. And I only say that because that was a great use case, right, of a larger bulk. We're hearing a lot of our fleet partners say, right now we're not necessarily purchasing vehicles in volume. But we're fulfilling some of the one-off requests, maybe for, a customer that has, one executive, right, who wants to get into a particular EV type, whether that be like some of the examples we had, like a Model Y, right, or a Mach-E, among many others to choose from in the market now. Is there an example that we could show of just a one vehicle type, right, rather than well, that was a significant end of the spectrum with that large volume, showing just what that breakdown looks like for just the purchase of one vehicle.
Absolutely, let's do that. And you can see it's very quick. We'll just run through this very quickly through, I'm going to leave it with the same assumptions, but just change it to one vehicle. And we'll make that vehicle an SUV, I think you mentioned, like a Model Y.
Yeah,
So
sure.
specific. So and we have here the whole catalog. So let's see if we can find Tesla Model Y. There it is, Tesla Model Y long range. I don't think they're going to have unless you want the performance, we'll choose the long range. And you can see now side by side, same exact elements we can change: mileage, days, right size of the charges, and here we go. So this will be a surprise, Jim. Let's see what happens. Yes, the interesting part here, Jim, is this is an interesting case because the electric vehicle costs more at the start. So in year one, it's $58,000, whereas the ICE vehicle equivalent's only $47,000. But you can see here that we break even. This is even called out for us in this box out here. In year three, the electric vehicle that Tesla Model Y starts to come into its own. And by the end of the cycle, you're saving $60,000 over 10 years by having the Tesla Model Y. And we can change this and see, let's see, maybe it's only 5 years I want it for. We can change that and rerun the assumptions very quickly and just see what would that look like over 5 years. What's the saving there? Okay, now we can see it much more magnified. You'd save $25,000 just on one vehicle of an SUV. I think we chose California there. All these assumptions can be changed in an instant, and you can rerun the math.
Yeah, cool stuff. Thank you. Thank you for that little curveball, but I think it goes a long way. And just, showing the comparisons from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Great. Let me move back to the deck for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
And what we could do, and just to kind of add to what Richard's said, these tools are very educational. They're really in the market to really have the conversation to kind of see if someone who's thinking about electrification, if this is a good fit. We can get a lot more granular. What we're showing right now is sort of like scratching the surface, right? We can get a lot more granular in some of the tools and really help a team, your team, kind of really highlight and really help that customer make that determination and decision to electrify or not. So just wanted to also just add that really quickly, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Thank you, Sachin. So, that's, I think, a good segue too into our final topic, right? So, which is electrification project planning. So it's helping our customers, or fleets also helping their customers to plan for electrification, including utility management. Now, Richard, I've enjoyed listening to you, especially over our recent chats, discuss what J.D. Power has learned, and is doing, I should say, learned and is doing in the industry when it comes to project planning. So could you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I think there's a big challenge that utilities are fraught or encountering, which is it's all very well looking at these cash flows, and you can see that EVs make a pretty clear business case in many cases. Not all, there's still situations where they don't. But then the situation that fleets encounter is, I face this challenge. I'm used to buying vehicles, but now I have to buy this fueling infrastructure, and it's a brand new muscle that they haven't exercised before. And how do they do it? And boy, is it complicated. And so I think the utilities are being hit with criticism of, hey, you need to help us through this. We've never done this before. There are a lot of costs. It appears to be a lot of bureaucracy as well. And so we have developed a tool called EV Deploy. And EV Deploy, as with all these tools, J.D. Power, we build these tools. We don't try to offer these ourselves. They're presented, for instance, all these can be white labeled. They're meant to be white labeled where the name of the utility may be appearing top left. So very specific to the utility. It could be a vehicle or a charger OEM. It could be a fleet management company. It can brand this. But let's talk about the situation you're describing here. The utility is basically being told, hey, how do I electrify my fleet location? I've not put in 20, 50, 100 charges before. How do I get from A to Z? And we have a product called EV Deploy. And what this does, it breaks it down into a collaborative workflow. And so any given utility probably has 10, 15, maybe 20 steps that you have to get through from the notion of I want to put chargers in my location to the chargers are in there, they're electrified and switched on. And those steps can include everything from, first of all, I need an initial design for the location. I need to get that design approved by the utility. Have I got the grid connection capacity for it? Then I will need to go through steps like getting approval from the city, maybe the county as well. So that there are all sorts of approval steps. And EV Deploy builds in this awareness that there are all these different approval steps. It also builds in understanding that this is the cost and the time it takes to go through each of these, say, 15 steps. It's going to take you approximately 2 years or a year to get through the steps. And so a customer with a fleet that comes to that utility can basically get this guidance. So it basically is a hand-holding collaboration tool that guides you through those different steps. And it also informs you how long roughly should each step take, how much is it going to add to the cost. We also track how costs are tracking against the budget that you expect to spend on this implementation project. And this can be folded in and then used to improve over time. So if a particular step takes longer than needed, like getting transformers, that can be built into the workflow. It's all very collaborative, and it guides these fleets on a portal that's presented by a utility to guide them to completion there.
It's fantastic. And the key being the collaboration part, right? Because there are so many moving parts in order to prepare for the move to electrification.
Right, and all this is done through document collaboration, so you're allowed to upload documents and adjust the costs and the timelines as you're going through the process. So it's the tool is collaborative, and it sort of helps improve over time. And the next time you go through the process, so utility can over time improve the guidance provided by the portal.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And just to add to that, to what Richard said,
yeah,
we have a lot of these platforms that we've actually built out for utilities. To Richard's point, utilities have a vested interest in promoting electrification, but they also want to make sure everything is in line as electrification sort of expands. So they have a vested interest, and because we work a lot with them, we also understand the different time of use rates. We understand how they communicate electrification in general to their public, and we're helping not only them but also, as you pointed out, Jim, OEMs as well.
Mm-hmm. Actually, Sachin brings up a very good point there, something that I'd neglected, and something that's very important to all the math we've shown you is the time of use rates. So I think any fleet understands that you pay a different amount of money for electricity in the middle of the day during peak electricity compared to during the nighttime. We have a rate engine built into our tools that automatically builds in the 8760, that's the number of hours there are in a year. We work out exactly how many kilowatts you're pulling at any given hour of the year, then translate that into what is the cost of that electricity applied to any given utility's rate plan. We can apply and adjust those rate plans. The portal, if it's a utility portal, can guide the fleet user. You probably want to switch to this rate plan for your electric vehicles, and it will maybe have 5, 10 rate plans that you can choose between, and it will guide the customer to the optimum rate plan to keep their electricity fuel costs low based on time of use rates.
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest takeaways that from the first time that we started discussing this internally for me was how this is establishing relationships and partnerships, really, I think that's the better word, between the utilities and the fleets, and the utilities and the OEMs, right? And it's again, bringing all of these moving pieces together under one hood, right? So very, very cool stuff. Thank you for that. I think this is a good time. I know we've received some great questions even prior to the webinar through the registration. And I think there was a couple in particular that we wanted to make sure that we get to today. Richard and Sachin, I know there was one each. I think we were going to field, and whoever wants to go first.
Sure.
Yeah, I could introduce those questions for you guys. I think the question that we received, we wanted to ask to Richard was, My company has multiple locations. How do these tools help me decide where to electrify first?
Quite. So what we showed obviously was a single location, and I think that we commonly get asked this question. So we're actually building this out. We're going to have this out in the summer, whereby you can have many scenarios. A scenario can be a location. A scenario might be a variation of a location in a particular combination of electric and diesel vehicles. And so what you can do then is maybe you have 100 locations. You can create a scenario for each of those 100 locations, and the tool will stack rank and show you the comparative ROI and the cost savings and feasibility for each of those locations to be electrified. So, and you can create combinations of scenarios for a given location. So that will get you to exactly what you're describing. Literally, which locations should I choose? It's applying all those incentives at each location. So it's going to obviously, the ones that are going to float to the top may be particular locations with more suited to electric vehicles, and some may be driven by location-specific incentives.
Thank you for that. The second question that we wanted to go through was, do these tools cover all vehicle types, and do they cover chargers?
Yes, and the answer is yes for both. So, and when we talk about all vehicle types, we're talking about everything from passenger sedan, SUV, up through cargo vans, step vans, box trucks, right up to trailer trucks. So we're talking class 1 through 8 on-road vehicles. And the tool also incorporates a number of off-road vehicles, including terminal tractors and TRUs, as transportation refrigeration units. On the charger side, as we touched on, often those charging costs can be substantial, and so can the incentives as well. So that's the good news. So I think building a tool that didn't take into consideration those charging costs would be not a complete tool. So yes, the tool covers on class 1 through 8 on-road and some off-road, as well as chargers, and we have a database of hundreds of chargers. So you can either choose a generic charger, like you saw on the screen earlier, 7.2 kilowatt. You could actually choose from a very detailed charger catalog, which you can filter and browse through and identify a specific charger you want to use against specific vehicle sets. So yes, the answer is yes to both questions.
Thank you for that. And the final question for today's session is going to be, how would my customers access and use these tools?
I can take that. So the customers can have it in a let's say there's a portal. If you're a fleet management company or you're an OEM, you usually have your own portals. So this could be inside that portal specific to your customer. So if your customer is thinking, should I consider electrification, they can log in, they can actually use all these tools, they can make their own judgment, and they can reach out to you to go through some of the details that come back from that from the tool. The other thing that we've seen a lot of customers use is the sales team, right? If the sales team is on a call and your customer is actually reaching out and asking, I see the future, I see electrification is moving in this direction. I'm not ready to put my feet in, but I want to kind of at least touch and put my toes in. What do I need to do? And these tools can help create and help that customer, and you can help that customer. And I think in today's day and age, it's a competitive advantage to at least have that solution on some level to kind of say, look, we know this is coming. We want to help you. We want to bring the tools, and electrification is not a good fit for everyone. There are a lot of people out there that it may not work for, but the tool really is to kind of help guide them and make sure that your customer doesn't go ahead and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a charger maybe that they don't really need, where a level 2 charger could do just as well as anything else. So it's a matter of planning, strategy, and really helping guide your customers.
Wonderful. Thank you. And special thanks to Richard and Sachin for bringing their expert knowledge to today's discussion. And thanks to all of you for taking the time to join us today. If you submitted any questions that we did not get to during today's session, we will follow up with an email soon after. If you're interested to discuss or learn more about the tools and how we can help you electrify, please feel welcome to reach out and contact me. My information is on the screen, and thank you and have a wonderful day.